Hello and welcome to another lesson from Level Up Mathematics. In today's lesson, we will be adding and subtracting fractions. Now before we start, let's review our steps for adding and subtracting fractions. In step 1, you want to convert any mixed numbers to improper fractions. Step 2, then you want to make sure you have common denominators for all the fractions. Step 3, after you get a common denominator, then you'll want to add or subtract the numerators. And the last step is you'll simplify if necessary. So in example 1, it says find each sum or difference. So in problem A, we have 7/8 plus -1/8. Now, because the signs are different, we're going to subtract, and we already have a common denominator. So if I subtract these numerators, I would get 6/8. Now, that can be simplified because I'm noticing that they'll both divide by 2, and that's going to give me 3/4. All right, problem B, we have -5/6 minus 3/6. So remember, for subtraction, we write it as addition of the opposite. So this would be, keep the first number the same, change the minus to a plus, and then take the opposite. All right, now our signs are the same. So we're just going to add the numerators to get -8/6, which would both divide by 2. And that would give me -4/3. Now, if we want to write that as a mixed number, we can say 3 goes into 4 one time. 1 times 3 is 3, and we have a remainder of 1. So as a mixed number, this would be -1 and 1/3. All right, problem C, we have two mixed numbers, -2 3/4 plus -1 3/4. So what I want to do first is turn them to improper fractions. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11, so -11/4. Over here, 4 times 1 is 4, 4 plus 3 is 7, so -7/4. Now, what I'm noticing is they have the same denominator, so I can just add up the numerators to get -18/4. Now, those are both even, so they'll both divide by 2, so I can simplify that down to -9/2. Now, I can turn that into a mixed number by saying 2 goes into 9 4 times. 4 times 2 is 8, and our remainder is 1. So as a mixed number, this would be -4 1/2. Now, in our next set of problems, we're going to talk about what do you do if you don't have a common denominator. So looking at problem A, we have -1/6 plus 2/3. So I want to look at my denominators. And what I always ask myself is, will the smaller number, 3, go into the larger number, 6? And the answer is yes. So if that happens, then your LCD will just be the larger number. All right? So my common denominator here is going to be 6. So the first one does not need to be rewritten because it already has a denominator of 6. But I want to rewrite that second fraction with a denominator of 6. So look at the 3 and ask yourself, what would you have to multiply 3 by to turn it into a 6? Well, hopefully you said 2. So if you multiply the bottom by 2, you have to multiply the top by 2. And that would give me 4/6. Now that you have a common denominator, just add them up. So -1 plus 4 is 3/6. Then that will reduce, they'll both divide by 3 to give you 1/2. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. All right, in problem B, let's look at our smaller numerator, 2, and ask yourself, will 2 go into 5? No, it won't. So what I do is I multiply them together, and I say my LCD will be 2 times 5, or 10. So I'm going to rewrite both of these fractions with a denominator of 10. All right, so let's look at our first fraction. Our denominator is 2. We want to turn the 2 into a 10. So ask yourself, what would you have to multiply 2 by to turn it into a 10? Well, hopefully you said times 5. So if you multiply the bottom by 5, you have to multiply the top by 5. So 1 times 5 is 5. All right, now look at the second fraction. I have a denominator of 5, and I want to turn it into a 10. So I would have to multiply the 5 times 2. So this numerator is going to get multiplied by 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. All right, now that you have a common denominator, add the numerators. 5/10 plus 4/10 would be 9/10. And that will not simplify, so leave it just as it is. Now, before we can get a common denominator on problem C, we're going to have to turn these into improper fractions. So 2 and 1/2, I'd say 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. That would become 5/2. And our second mixed number, 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 is 17/5. Now, look at your denominators. We have a 2 and a 5. So again, we'll have to use a least common denominator of 10. So I'm going to rewrite these two fractions with a denominator of 10. So let's start with our first one. We have a denominator of 2. What would you have to multiply 2 by to turn it into 10? Well, hopefully you said 5. So if you multiplied the bottom by 5, you have to multiply the top by 5. So that would give you 25. Now look at your second denominator. You have a 5. What would you have to multiply 5 by to turn it into 10? Well, hopefully you said 2. So 17 times 2 is 34. Now that you have a common denominator, you can add these up. 20 plus 30 is 50, and 5 plus 4 is 9. So this would be 59/10. Now, to turn that into a mixed number, I could say 10 goes into 59 5 times. 5 times 10 is 50. Subtract. So 5 and 9/10. All right, problem D. We have 5 minus 3 and 3/4. So I need to write the 5 as a fraction, 5/1, and I need to turn this mixed number into an improper. So 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15/4. Now let's look at our denominators. We have a 1 and a 4. Will the 1, the small number, go into 4? Yes, 4 times. So that means our common denominator is going to be 4. So I don't have to do anything to the second fraction. It's already got a denominator 4. So look at your denominator, 1. What would you have to multiply 1 by to turn it into a 4? Well, hopefully you said you'd have to multiply it by 4, which means you'll have to multiply the top by 4. So 5 times 4 is 20. So now we can take 20/4 minus 15/4, which would be 5/4. If I want to write that as a mixed number, 4 goes into 5 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. 5 minus 4 is 1. So this would be 1 and 1/4. All right, example 3. A family records the amount of milk used every day for 4 days. The table shows those results. How much milk does the family have left after 4 days if they started with 1 gallon? So the table shows on day 1 they used 3/16 of a gallon. On day 2, 3/8 of a gallon. On day 3, 1/6 of a gallon. And on day 4, 1/4 of a gallon. So what we want to know is how much total milk did they drink? So we're adding 3/16 plus 3/8 plus 1/6 plus 1/4. Now let's look at our denominators. So we need a common denominator. So what I usually do is I ask myself, the largest denominator is 16. Will 8 go into 16? Yes. Will 6 go into 16? No. So my common denominator cannot be 16. So then I multiply that by 2. 16 times 2 is 32. And I ask myself, will 8 go into 32? Yes. Will 6 go into 32? No. So I can't use 32. All right, now I'll multiply 16 times 3. 16 times 3 is 48. Will 8 go into 48? Yes. Will 6 go into 48? Yes. Will 4 go into 48? Yes. So now I know my common denominator is going to be 48. So I'm going to rewrite each one of these with a denominator of 48. All right. So looking at our first denominator, 16. To get 16 to turn into a 48, I'd have to multiply it by 3. So I'll have to multiply the top by 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. All right, for our second denominator, to get an 8 to turn it into 48, I'd have to multiply by 6. So 3 times 6 gives me 18. All right, going on to the next denominator, 6 will go into 48 8 times. So I'll have to multiply the top by 8. 1 times 8 is 8. And then 4 will go into 48 12 times. So I'll have to multiply that times 12. All right, so now I'm going to add my numerators up. 9 plus 18 is 27. 27 plus 8 is 35. And 35 plus 12 would be what? 47. So if I add all my numerators up, I get 47 over 48. Now, we still don't have the final answer because that's the total amount of milk they used. What the question was is how much milk do they have left if they started with 1 gallon? So I'm going to make some room here. That's the total, all right? What I want to do now is start with what they started with, which is 1 gallon, and I'm going to subtract 47 over 48 of a gallon. So I'm going to write 1. I want a common denominator, so I'm going to write 1 is 48 over 48. 47 over 48 will stay that way because now we have a common denominator, 48. And when I subtract 48 minus 47, I get 148. So this is how much they have left, 1/48 of a gallon. All right. This week, Tyler will practice with his band for 1.5 hours on Monday, 1 3/4 hours on Tuesday, and 2 hours on Wednesday. Next week, he will practice with his band for the same number of hours on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. What is the total number of hours Tyler will practice with his band over these 6 days? So I'm taking 1 1/2 plus 1 3/4 plus 2, and then we're doing that all again. 1 1/2 plus 1 3/4 plus 2. Now I want to rewrite all of these as either a mixed number or a fraction. So 1 1/2 would be 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1. This would be 3 over 2. 1 3/4 would be 7 over 4. 2 would become 2 over 1. Now here 1 1/2 was 3 over 2. 1 3/4 was 7 over 4. 2 was 2 over 1. Now I want to look at all of my denominators because I'm trying to decide what my common denominator is. So my largest denominator was 4. Will all of those numbers go into 4? Yes. So that's your common denominator. So I'm going to rewrite each fraction with a denominator of 4. All right. So go back to the first fraction. What would you have to multiply 2 by to turn it into a 4? Well, that would be times 2. So this would be 6/4. 7/4 already has the correct denominator. So go to your next one. What would you have to multiply 1 by to turn it into a 4? Well, you'd have to multiply it by 4. So that would be 2 times 4 would be 8. So this would be 6 over 4, 7 over 4, 8 over 4. All right, now we're going to multiply all the numerators. So we have 6 plus 7 is 13. 13 plus 8 is 21. 21 plus 6 is 27. 27 plus 7 is 34. 34 plus 8 is 42. So this would be 42 over 4. And I want to turn that into a mixed number. So 4 goes into 42 10 times. 10 times 4 is 40 with the remainder of 2/4. So this would be 10 and 2/4, which would reduce to 10 1/2 hours. And that concludes today's lesson, adding and subtracting fractions.